up here in Queensland, we have a union called the Queensland Nurses Union that traditionally has supported nurses, and nurses have joined in the tens of thousands, obviously mainly from the public sector. Well, some years ago, only a few years ago, a rival organisation was set up. It's known as, let me get this right, the Nurses Professional Association of Queensland. And this evening to talk about it, we've got Graeme Haycroft, who's one of the directors of the organisation. So we're going to hear a bit about what he's been doing. So welcome, Graeme. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks very much, fellas. Good to be back.
Good to see you, Graeme.
Yeah, well, look, let's just kick right off. Yep. What is the Nurses Professional Association of Queensland all about? When did you set it up? What have you been doing? How's it going?
Well, it's going great guns. We set it up about a bit over 3 years ago as an alternative for nurses to the QNU. It occurred to me that having been in a business for a long time and in a similar sort of business, that they were charging a hell of a lot of money for not much return. And I thought that, and as did my business partner, Kath Seaver, who set it up with me, we thought if we couldn't do it at half the price, we weren't trying. And 3 years later, we're able to do it quite comfortably at half the price and provide a better service. So that's what it's about.
So what are the services that you're providing, Graeme? I mean, a union, you know, in my sort of humble opinion, is surely there just to have the negotiation with the employer and make sure that the employees aren't done over.
Well, interestingly, that's probably the least of it, Cam. Originally, we thought that was the case, but nurses, all the employees have disciplinary issues, problems with bullying, all the everyday sort of stuff and we spend most of our time dealing with the minor nurse problems. They're not minor to the nurses who have the problems, I've got to tell you, but. As for the negotiation of EBAs, well, we're just starting to do that, and we reckon we can do it better. So, and we're in the marketplace to do that. So, that's pretty much our story. We provide the services. To give you an example, we had one of our members. This happened in November. A person came in with a dementia patient. They'd been there twice before, and they arrived at the north side emergency. They were full. They said, well, sorry, we can't help. They said, well, you can go next door, which is like 20 metres away. And the woman said, no, I don't want to go there. My father died there. So they said, we can't do it here. We simply don't have the space. So you need to go somewhere else. So normally that would be the end of the situation, and they sent them off to St Andrews. Lo and behold, just before Christmas, they find an anti-discrimination claim has been made against our member. And we're defending her. So, and we'll fight her all the way, and we're not going to give in because the person that's making the claim simply wants money. But our member needs to be protected, and that's the sort of stuff we do.
Graeme, obviously nurses are the lifeblood of the health system, and having been married to one for 43 years, I need to say that early. And Cam's married to a nurse as well. In fact, my wife ended up being a professor of nursing, so we're in the nurse family. Let me ask you a couple of questions. I'm not trying to be impolite or rude here. Where do you get your money from? Are you a profit-making enterprise? You're an association, which is different from a union itself. So where does the money come from? Where do the profits go? Good question.
The structure is, and it's on our website, so it's everyone there can see it. The association is simply a not-for-profit association set up under Fair Trade Queensland. It has a constitution like all others. And the services, unlike the traditional union where the services are provided, if you like, by the people who work for the union, we have a service company which provides the services under contract for fee to the association. So, yes, the service company hopefully would make a profit, and we were the organisation, if you like, that funded the start-up of the thing. And down the track, we would hope that the amount of money that we receive in fees will be outweighed by would outweigh rather the amount of money we have to spend to provide the service. But because we're under contract and we'll be in a competitive environment, that's fine. You know, the market will sort us out. If we overcharge, someone else will start another association, and we'll have to watch our game. So that's how the structure is. The association itself is non-profit, but hopefully we would be eventually going to be profitable. And the money came from essentially Kath Seaver and I worked for 3 years for nothing, and I put in a few dollars, and it's now going well. It's trading well.
Graeme, the issue about politics, I noticed on your website, and I had a look, you're obviously trying to separate yourself out from the Nurses Union on the basis of saying, all right, you're non-political. As you know, the QNU, which was affiliated with the Labor Party, no longer is, and the Queensland division, if I recall correctly, was the only QNU that was ever, or any Nurses Union division that was ever affiliated with the Labor Party, but they're not anymore. So, I mean, are you a member of the LNP? I mean, is this a front for the LNP? I mean, I know this sounds like an ugly question, but I just really want to get to the heart of this. Is there politics in this? Are you involved with the LNP? Are you ever going to give them money?
Am I ever going to give them money? Answer that, no. I'm actually a member of the LNP, and I have a great deal of empathy for the problems that Campbell's had, because I've had similar ones. So this is not a front for the LNP in any way, shape or form. It is absolutely apolitical. Now, by virtue, there is a political element, I suppose, by default, because every member that joins us is a member that the QNU doesn't get, and the membership money that they get can't be used to support the political parties that they do. Now, you said they're not affiliated. That just simply means, as you well know, that they're not bound to give any specific amount of money to the Labor Party, but they can still support them, and they openly do, and they use their members' money for it. So we can't do that. Our Constitution will not allow our association to give any money to any political party. Full stop. So we don't need to be political. We're a very Catholic organisation. We don't care about the politics because we don't have to. You know, all the nurses want is service. They don't want the politics. They don't want, you know, we're supporting this and we're supporting that, and, you know, we're going to end domestic violence and all this sort of stuff. That's not what nurses want. They want straight out service, and they want to know that we're actually fighting for nurses and we're looking after the nurses' interest and not the public interest. I mean, well, obviously we're interested in the public, but the public doesn't pay us, Pete. The nurses pay us.
Sure.
Graeme, just then talking about membership, you are claiming that you've got 2,000 members now after establishing 2 or 3 years ago, as you said before. Would you like to talk about that a bit, and how have you been recruiting people, and how I suppose in the workplace environment, how's it going versus, you know, obviously the QNU I'm sure would be concerned about this.
Well, I think they've got good reason to be concerned, because we're half the price. Now, 3 years, the growth was initially, we got about 200 members, I think, in the first year, and the membership's growing 3 times. So we were about 600 or 700 members, I think, this time last year, and we're now 2,200 or something I saw today. So we're only tiny compared to the QNU. They've got 60,000 members. But 3 times. By Christmas, we will easily be between 6,000 and 8,000. We're half the price. We do a better job, and the word is spreading, basically by word of mouth. The next year is the killer year, because there will be 3 times again, and we'll have 20,000 members, and the QNU will be down to 40,000. And I would suggest that they're going to start to have some serious management control issues at that point. We're right. We're a mean, lean, skinny mob. We don't have any, you know, waterfront offices on the Brisbane River. You know, we don't have expense accounts. There's no cars supplied. It is a lean, mean operation. We provide the service. We've got arrangements with lawyers and industrial relations people. We've got our own in-house people, and we've got. What we found pretty successful is that most of the problems that nurses get are most of them management related. And you know, I'm a businessman. Kath Seaver's a business person, and our other two other people we've got that do this work, they're out of business too. One, nurses, but they understand, if you like, the management side, and they can cut straight in on these issues.
Graeme,
so does that answer your question?
I'm sure it does. Graeme, let me follow it up and ask you one other in relation to how you operate. Clearly one of the ugly things that unions need to do, and in this case presumably you do, is EB negotiations, and they can get really quite unpleasant at times. And how are you as an association handling EB negotiations? Do you have a strategy to do it? I mean, I assume you do them. How do you do them?
Well, we're just starting on that. There's two issues, as you know. The private hospital system, we come under federal legislation. The bargaining rights are straightforward. And in practice, in Queensland Health, I mean, Queensland Health effectively they have to deal with this. Because you've got 500 nurses at a hospital, and 150 or 200 of them are ours, and this is going to be the situation pretty shortly. They can hardly say, "Oh, look, we're going to discriminate against you people. We're only going to negotiate with the other people, the members of the QNU." So there's going to be change there, and in practice, we will just go ahead and do it. My personal view is that the best deal for nurses will come essentially from simplification of the system. I mean, as you know, the whole system's been taken over by HR people. The HR people with the QNU have negotiated extremely complicated and unnecessarily complex arrangements with the HR people in the hospitals. And the nurses, I think, have missed out on a lot of this. If we can simplify it, I think we'll get, I know we'll get a better value for the nurses themselves. So that's where we want to go. And the other thing that I think we're going to look at, and again, there needs some changes to attitudes and things, but why shouldn't nurses choose themselves how their benefits arrive? We've got this thing that, you must have domestic violence leave, and you must have sick pay, and you must have this, and you must have X and Y. At the end of the day, why don't we give nurses the choice as to whether they have those things individually? You can do it today. Actuarial valuations are, quite sound way of doing it. And I reckon that's an interesting goal that we could work towards. And it's just going to take a bit of time. We're going to get the nurses involved. And they're rising to it. They really, really are enthusiastic about how we're proposing to do it on a decentralised manner. And we want to involve the nurses in the process rather than have sort of, the mythical high-level negotiations being done by union officials and HR people. So that's where we're going with it, Pete. And I think that's where the nurses they are starting to respond to that. We've got a long way to go, but that's where we're going.
Good, Graeme. Just to sort of fight the union's corner for a moment. I'm sure there are a few people a bit shocked with me saying that, but just in the interest of fairness about this whole thing. Yeah. but I'll put it to you like this. Surely the real power of a union is about solidarity. It's one organisation representing all the employees, particularly in a large, say working for Queensland Health, going in there, this is our position, we're going to hold the employers' feet to the fire and get the best possible deal. Surely what you're doing is fragmenting the ability of employees to get that best sort of deal. I mean, isn't there an opportunity for the employer, in this case Queensland Health, to divide and conquer?
Well, I think they do that anyway. Look, I'm not sure that this is the great mythology of the union movement, that somehow we all need to be solid on this. Really, nurses are professionals. They're not coal miners. They have quite different needs in terms of their industrial needs than, say, the traditional, I use the term coal miner, where we sort of, you have the miners, saying we're not going to do this. If you don't agree to our conditions, we'll close the mine. Now, nurses aren't going to strike and go on strike anyway. So it's just not in their nature. So we don't need to have these huge confrontations. There's plenty of fat in the system. You know, we've got to start getting rid of the bureaucrats and the clipboard nurses, or what I call them, the people that are no longer necessary to the process. Simplify it all. There's plenty of money for nurses. And the other thing that we're about, and the QNU aren't certainly not about, is, you know, it's not in the nurses' interest that we have more nurses. I mean, Pete, you used to be the station, was it the Station Masters Union?
I did.
I mean, it was going back a long time, but
only you and I
imagine
remember.
what happened if Joe Bielka-Peterson had. Mate, I got a lot of time for you. I remember when you and Dennis Murphy went out and, you know, built the Labor Party up from scratch. That's right, and not many people remember that. So you're one out of the box, Pete. But let's say that Joe Bielka-Peterson had said to you, Pete, got some good news. We're going to increase the number of station masters. We're going to qualify them by 20%, but we're not having any more stations. You know, on one hand you go, oh, another 20% more members, but but the more important thing is, and I'm sure you wouldn't have ducked this one, you said, hang on a minute, I don't want another 20% of competitors with my existing station masters, because that'll put down their wages and conditions. And that's a key. I think the QNU made a huge strategic error here in urging and pushing for more nurses, effectively at the expense of the existing nurses. That's just crazy. So anyway, we've taken the opposite view. We're opposing nurse ratios on that ground because they deprofessionalise nursing. You know, we're looking after nurses. So that's our shtick, if you like, Pete.
Graeme, let me ask you this question, because I was going to go to the question about nurse ratios and you beat me to it. But let me take to the next question.
Okay.
One of the issues here, of course, is how much money governments, it doesn't matter whether Liberal, National Party, Labor or whatever, how much they actually put into health, because one of the things here is you've got to fund the health system properly to make sure that you've got the required number of nurses, because while I accept your point, which you made quite articulately just a minute ago, one of the problems, of course, is if you've got a limited budget, what happens is junior nurses will then be used to replace senior nurses. So you've got to make sure you've got the right quality of nurse and experience in the system. So how are you going to make sure governments, in fact, fund health properly?
I'm not sure that's our domain, Pete. You know, our job is to look after the nurses, and you made the point beautifully that if budgets are static, and the reality is budgets are going to become static because they're not all going to be great governments like the Beattie and the Campbell-Newman government. There's going to be many others not so good and perhaps wise, and there will be constrictions on budgets. And when that happens, all that's going to happen if you've got a manager stuck with a set ratio, they're going to, a lot of them, not everyone, because most of them are good people, but a lot of them are going to be sucked into, oh gee, we've got to meet this ratio. I won't get as many RNs. I'll get juniors and I'll get EENs who are cheaper again. So you get junior nurses and your EENs, and the EENs are part of this new nurse ratio. Yeah, that's right. That's crazy stuff. I mean, I read the I don't know whether you probably have, the actual report this whole thing was based on. It was done on research in America, and it was specific for, if you like, qualified registered nurses. You know, it established that if there's less than a certain ratio, then the mortality rose, and that's a pretty obvious result, I think. But over here, the fact that they've included EENs, and these are good people, but they don't have the critical thinking capacity of a registered nurse. They're in this ratio. There's going to be huge pressure to get more EENs and more junior nurses at the expense of senior nurses. So where's the career? Where's the career chance for the young people? And what about the senior nurses? They're for that chop.
Graeme, I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut you off because we're out of time. But can I just say
that's right.
A very big thanks for coming on this evening. You've kicked off a very interesting debate for us, and perhaps we should get you on in 6 to 12 months to see how your numbers are going with those projections you threw out this evening. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Graeme. Good to see you.
Thanks, guys.